Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this study group for the offering to Guru Vajrasattva sadhana from the Dujam Tersar tradition.
Welcome, everyone. And we're going to begin with a prayer to our lineage gurus that we could all study and learn the Dharma well.
Unzan bozem garab shiri pema kara jiba nishu nga sosor nognan tentan gyatsa so ande lama namba so ande okmin chunki yinki bonrana duzo sangye kenge ngowo ni rangsem chunku ngonsum tunzim pa sawe lama namla solwande ngonsi ongin ngonsi rigzen den dojin sa maon de shim ban ta ye shab dan ta pen chong gyat sa trong beng Trig dre ye shin doje la sol wande.
Thanks to everyone for joining us, and I'm looking forward to this chance to study with all of you. And I wanted to begin with a few reminders about Zoom to make our experience more enjoyable. If you put your view in gallery mode, look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, choose View, and choose Gallery Mode. Then it will show Keith and myself next to each other, which might be a little bit easier than having it switch back and forth. And if you're having trouble hearing, please be sure to turn up the volume on your computer. You can also try using earbuds or headphones instead of your computer speakers. And if you're having any technical difficulties, please chat us. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a bunch of buttons, and one of them should be chat. Or you might need to find the more button, and then in that it'll give you chat. And if you look at the chat window, you can choose who you send the message to. If you're having technical difficulties, please send it to Tashi host. And if you have questions, please send it to Keith Lacoste or Ila Reitz. And we'll answer the questions a little bit later in the session. And also, I wanted to let everyone know that we are recording these sessions and the video will be made available. So that's one of the reasons why we might seem to kind of rush through certain information or not repeat things, is because these videos are available as recordings. So yesterday's video was made available, the recording was made available in the email that went out about today's study group. And the email that goes out about next week's study groups will contain the recordings for both yesterday and today. So if you felt like you missed something, please go back and watch the videos at your leisure. Or if you're in the wrong time zone, a different time zone, and are not able to join, please don't lose sleep. Just come and watch the video anytime is convenient for you. So to begin, when we are engaging in any virtuous endeavor, we have to start by adjusting our mind and our perspective. And so we should bring to mind the four thoughts: the preciousness of this human rebirth, the impermanence, not only the inevitability of death, but the impermanence of each moment, the law of cause and effect, the fact that all of our actions will bear fruit in the future, and the fact that our current experience is caused by our past actions, and the truth of suffering, the suffering nature of this reality in which we find ourselves, and the great suffering experienced by ourselves and by all sentient beings should be understood. And then we should bring to mind an attitude of going for refuge. And so we go for refuge in our daily life in many things. We go for refuge in our refrigerator to keep our food cold. We go for refuge in our car to get us to town. And we rely on many things for support, for help, for protection. So this is the moment to ask ourselves, what is the true refuge? And how can we find the true state of happiness or protection? And the only way to find that, the only true state of happiness that can be found, is the state of fully awakened Buddhahood. We can find this state not only for ourselves, but for all beings. We can help them all reach this state by relying on the only true refuge there is, which is the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, his teachings, and the Sangha. So cultivate an attitude of renunciation, realizing that none of the things of this life will really do it, will really bring us true happiness, and an attitude of refuge. And then, along with that, cultivate an attitude of bodhicitta, realizing that all beings have the Buddha nature. They all could be perfect, fully enlightened Buddhas right now. And it is just because of their ignorance and their lack of knowing their true nature that they are in a terrible state of suffering. And so wish that they all could be free from that state, and that they all, every single one, could reach the state of fully awakened Buddhahood. So let's just take a moment to think about these things. Keith?
Oh, in the last session, we briefly went over how, of the two genres of sadhana practice, a bell puja or drum puja, this practice is a bell puja. And each of these genres has their own set of rules to follow. And those rules are separated into three categories: the melodies, the proportions, and the dances, or the movements: Yang, Tit, Gar in Tibetan. And these three are all outer aspects of the practice, like a performance. They glorify the practice with this beauty and power of inspiration. So those are the outer aspects, but there are also the inner aspects, such as our view, the meditations and visualizations, as well as our intent and aspirations, which are also so important. But it may seem that sometimes that inner aspect tends to get sort of overshowered by the outer aspects. Of course, it's very difficult to do both at the same time, especially if you are in a key role of the outer activities, such as tripping or leading the chants or performing the Lama activities. Actually, the outer performance is limited to only our physical capabilities or our means of offering, whereas the inner aspect of practice can become inconceivably vast and profound. However, our gurus and Guru Rinpoche himself taught that both the outer and inner aspects are important, and gradually bringing them together is a crucial point of Vajrayana sadhana practice. And the only way to do that is to practice. And that is one reason for the monthly pujas and the retreats that are held at different centers, to give this opportunity to practice. Of course, in our daily individual practices, we can focus mainly on the inner aspects of our minds foremost. And then when we come to a puja, we are offering however much of that ability and realization we can. But we should also offer the body and speech, which is where the three aspects of melody, proportions, and dances come in. And in fact, these larger sadhana texts, such as this Storsam Lama Chupa, are meant to be practiced together as a sangha and are often referred to as an offering sadhana or drupchut, which means that all the participants are offering their body, speech, and minds together as one, training in melody, proportions, and dances of the sadhanas is how we harmonize our body and speech. And they have this particular power of being, and they have the particular power of being from this great lineage of past enlightened masters, all the way down to the Buddha. So, speaking of the inner aspect of practice, going back to the inner aspect, last session we concluded with the blessing of the offering substances. And there is a great passage in the book Generating the Deity by Gautama Rinpoche that goes over this section, which seems like it would be good to read at this point. And actually, this book is a great read if you want to learn more about any of the meanings and visualizations of each section in the practice. So, blessing the offering materials. Visualize yourself as the deity. The syllables Ram, Yam, and Kam radiate from your heart. The syllable Ram, corresponding to the element fire, radiates flame towards all the offering materials that you have gathered and burns away all their impure characteristics. The syllable Yam, corresponding to the element air, blows wisdom air that scatters all clinging to objects as truly existing. The syllable Kam, corresponding to the element water, pours forth water that cleanses all habitual and negative instincts. These three elements render your offerings perfectly pure and clean. The samsaric potential attached to your offerings is cleared away through the power of the elements, which in their true nature are female principles, the three consorts. The first, Ram, is Dakini Gukarmo, the second, Yam, Dakini Damsik Drolma, and the third, Kam, is Dakini Mamaki. In this place of pure offerings, see that all material objects are inherently empty, like space. Rest in meditative equipoise and refrain from the tendency to view appearances as truly existing. Thus you effect the essential offering. In that pure state, you can make pure offerings of flowers or any other objects that please the five senses. Next, you visualize the syllable Droom, which transforms into an infinitely vast jeweled vessel. Within this vessel is the syllable Om, which brings forth innumerable beautiful flowers from the realm of the gods that serve as an outer offering. The inner offering is the self-born natural experience of the five sense fields. Within this vast jeweled vessel, imagine first the flowers, then all of the different objects that delight the sense fields: water to drink and wash with, perfumed water, food and fragrances, arising and offered by offering goddesses. The whole visualization is magnificent, perfect, and unlimited. Every available space is filled with offerings. Thus, ordinary merit is accumulated by making ordinary offerings. So those were the outer offerings. And then onto the inner. Three specific offerings are made during Vajrayana sadhana: the medicine, the min, the torma, and the rakta. And each offering has a meditation that precedes it. The first offering is within a container, which is self-born. Inside an infinitely vast skull cup is the essence of the five types of flesh and the five types of nectar. So in the five fleshes symbolize the five Buddhas, or five types of primordial awareness. The five nectars symbolize the five consorts and the pure nature of the five elements. Each flesh and nectar is marked by the seed syllable of the Buddha and consort. So those would be Om Hung Tram Ri A. Those five syllables are the five male consorts. And then Mum Lam Mam Pom Pom are the five syllables of the female consorts. And those seed syllables transform into the five Buddhas with their consorts. From the point of union of the five Buddhas and consorts, the white and red substances mingle and descend into the skull cup. The white and red nectar fills the skull cup in all directions, dissolving into the five types of flesh and nectar. The fleshes and nectars then dissolve, following which the Buddhas and consorts also dissolve, melting into the nectar. The nectar is now fully endowed with the essence of the color, smell, taste, and power of the five states of primordial wisdom. This is the offering of Min, the medicine. This has been an extremely brief explanation. Next, the offering of Torma. Visualize a jeweled vessel So the offering of Min was in a skull cup. Now we're visualizing a jeweled vessel, as vast as space, with a base the size of the earth. Inside the vessel is a torma. The torma represents whatever it is that you want to offer to the deities. Think that the torma is great and wish fulfilling, adorned with the sun and moon, filling all of space. According to tradition, it is often explained here that the jeweled vessel represents the universe or the inanimate world, and that the torma within, which is offered along with all materials, possessions, and wealth, represents all animate sentient beings. So we're offering the universe and its contents together. Then the offering of Rakta, third, is accompanied by the following visualization. Imagine an infinitely vast vessel made of a freshly severed skull. So it's a fresh skull rather than like a dry skull. Like I think the Min would be offered in a drier skull, and then the Rakta is a fresh skull. This vessel contains blood, symbolizing the total energy of desire and attachment in the three realms. Since the blood contains the attachment of the three realms, the actual nature of the blood is free from attachment, and its nature is desireless, great bliss. Imagine that whatever pure appearances you wish, pure qualities you wish for, are contained within the skull cup. These three offerings, the Min, Torma, and Rakta, also represent the three kayas of enlightened awareness. The nature of medicine is appearance, the nature of blood is emptiness, and the nature of the Torma is appearance and emptiness in union. So that's an explanation of like the inner visualization, what you have in your mind while you're doing that part. Ila?
When Keith was reading that just now, I was thinking about a torma. We were talking a little bit about torma yesterday and the idea that it can basically be a symbol for anything. And it sort of came to mind that it's kind of like in algebra when they start using the letter X to represent a number that's unknown. And so then you just have X in all these different equations. A torma is kind of like that. It's basically a thing that's unknown. And then when you put it into all these different places in the text, it becomes all these different things based on the context or the situation. Anyway, next we come to the main section of the practice. It says, so we're on page 49, and all of those offerings that Keith was just describing, he might have said this, but they're on page 49 when we say the different mantras that we talked about yesterday. And so at the bottom of page 49, it says, the second section, the actual practice, has 5 parts. First, the support for the assembly is a clear visualization of the Samaya Sattva. So you'll see this word a lot, Samaya Sattva or Samaya being. And in generation stage, this refers to you visualizing yourself as the deity. And Samaya means commitment or promise. And what that means is that when you received empowerment, which is the gateway, the beginning of this path, you sat down with a lama and they introduced you to the fact that you are the deity, that is your nature. And then at the end of the empowerment, you make the promise, I will never forget this. I will always see myself as the deity. And then that's why we do regular practice every day to remind ourselves of that fact. And so the commitment being, or the Samaya Sattva, is when we remind ourselves, we remember, oh, I'm the deity, right? We are keeping that commitment or fulfilling that commitment. And before we get into the visualization, I just wanted to say a little bit about Vajrasattva's perspective compared to our perspective. Now, the disclaimer here is that whenever you start talking about the ultimate nature of things, or how do the deities see things, how do the Buddhas see things, you're never going to get it right, because the Buddha's wisdom is non-conceptual, it's ineffable, it's completely beyond words and thoughts and any kind of ordinary concepts that we could have. And so just talking about it, you're always going to get it wrong because you're using limited concepts and words. And actually, I've heard Gyaltsen Rinpoche from time to time, he would say, lamas are liars. And he didn't always explain this, but what I came to understand is that lamas talk about the ultimate nature of things all the time. They use words and concepts to describe what is actually completely beyond concepts, completely beyond our ordinary minds. And so from that perspective, they're lying, because anything you say about the ultimate nature is wrong, because it's limited and it's a concept. But we talk about it anyway, because when we use concepts to approach that ultimate nature, it helps us move in the right direction. And if we move in that direction far enough, then our faith and our devotion and our merit and our connection to the Buddhas and our connection to our guru has the power to just kind of bounce us over the edge. So we're just kind of sidling up to the edge of the no concepts area. So anyhow, to get back to using concepts to talk about enlightenment, how does Vajrasattva see things? So let's just say, okay, say I'm Vajrasattva right now. Anything that appears to me, I'm just going to say, wow, this is just an amazing manifestation of my own nature. This is an amazing display of my own pristine mind. So it doesn't matter what comes in front of Vajrasattva. If a rabid dog comes in front of him, he'll say, wow, what an amazing display of my own nature. Or if an avalanche happens right in front of him, he'll just say, wow, what an amazing display of my own nature. Everything is my own nature. Everything is my own body, my own voice, my own mind. This is all the expression of my own attributes, my own qualities, which are vast and inconceivable. And so because he sees things like this, he's never overwhelmed. He never gets nervous. Nothing ever surprises him. Nothing ever disappoints him. He doesn't get hungry or thirsty. He doesn't need anything externally. And everything that arises is perfectly okay, perfectly accepted, and actually enjoyed. It's all just enjoyed as this magical, amazing, blissful display of his own nature. In contrast to that, we sentient beings, when an object arises, basically the subtle habit that our mind is constantly performing is when an object arises, we grasp to it as an object, as something external. And as soon as we grasp to an object, there's an implied subject, there's an implied perceiver of that object. Now, we think it's an independent object, but the fact is, if we don't perceive it, it doesn't really exist. For example, if you had an object that no one ever saw, no one ever knew existed, no one ever made, it just was out there somewhere, not being perceived by anybody ever at all, you wouldn't even know it was there. How would you even know it was an object? So it would really have no relevance or no existence to anybody with a mind. So whenever you see an object, there's this implied subject that has to be there, and that's what duality is. You have a subject and an object. And in Tibetan, the words they use for this are zung zin. And you'll see this sometimes in the text. Zung means to grasp to an object, zung wei yul, and zin means to grasp to a subject, zinpei sem, the mind that is grasped and the object that is grasped. And some translators use the words grasping for the object and fixation for the subject. So whenever you see these kind of pairs of words like grasping and fixation, or grasping and clinging, usually it's referring to grasping to an object and grasping or clinging or fixating upon a subject. And so that's kind of the basic state of duality. And so, but we don't just grasp to one object and be satisfied. No, as soon as we grasp to one object, there's another object and another object and another object. And so each one we see as separate from ourselves. We see it as having certain attributes, and we compare them. Our conceptual mind is constantly comparing all these objects. And then it can say, oh, this one is big and that one is small. Oh, this one is yellow and that one is red. Oh, this one is good and that one is bad. And so we kind of create all of these objects that are external to ourselves and that have different attributes. And then they attack us. So these external objects actually cause us a lot of problems, because suddenly we need some of them. Because we've made ourselves separate, with separate attributes, then we need things. We need food, we need shelter, we need love, we need this and that and the other. And then there's other objects that have attributes that we consider to be a threat or that will harm us or that will annihilate us. And so we reject those. We reject enemies, we reject poison, we reject people we don't like, we reject dangerous circumstances. We try to avoid all those things as much as we possibly can, right? And that's just common sense to us in this relative world that we have created. It makes sense and it works to a certain extent. But the fact is, deep down, we have forgotten that we're Vajrasattva and that all phenomena is the magical display of our own wisdom. So when we do generation stage practice, we're trying to just kind of let that dualistic situation, just kind of let it lie and focus our mind, meditate upon the true nature of things, which is to say, oh, I am Vajrasattva, and this is all my pure land. This is all my magical display. All forms are Vajrasattva. All sounds are Vajrasattva's voice. All thoughts are Vajrasattva's wisdom mind. You can also say, all forms are my own body. All sounds are my own voice. All thoughts are my own wisdom mind. And so in some ways, that's kind of the basic meditation of seeing oneself as a deity. On the bottom of page 49, the meditation begins, as most generation stage meditation begins, with a mantra that acknowledges the state of emptiness. So in this case, it's Om Maha Shunyata Jnana Benzar Sobhava Atma Ko Hang. Shunyata means emptiness. And so when we say this mantra, we are allowing all appearances to dissolve into their nature, which is emptiness. The idea of emptiness, for those of you who are beginners, is an elusive idea, and it's one that you really have to study. And one of the best ways of doing that is to study the Madhyamaka level of teachings, where they explain what is great emptiness. It is beyond the four extremes. It is beyond existing, beyond non-existence, beyond both, and beyond neither. And they give many, many examples. But just for now, it's important to understand that when we say everything dissolves into emptiness, we are not becoming nihilists. We are not thinking, oh, everything is meaningless, nothing exists, everything is just a big void, there's no law of cause and effect, etc., etc. We're not negating things the way that they function for us in this relative world. What we're doing is we are just acknowledging the illusory nature of all appearances, that all appearances are like a dream. When you wake up from the dream, it just vanishes. So at this moment, we're just allowing all of our phenomena, whatever it is, whatever's arising in our minds, whether it's ordinary thoughts, even all the things we were just generating in the practice, you just allow them all to vanish into this state of emptiness. Then at the top of page 50, from that state, we begin to generate the deity. So the first three lines are, all phenomena of samsara and enlightenment are, by their nature, non-conceptual and unelaborate. So this is acknowledging that basic state of emptiness, or dharmakaya. This is the first samadhi of the three samadhis, which are explained in many, many generation stage teachings, and you should learn about what they are. The second line, from the wisdom union of unceasing compassion. This refers to the idea that this great state of emptiness is pervaded by luminosity or radiance. It's not just plain empty. And that's the second samadhi. Instantly, oneself awakens as the innate deity. And so this is when one's self appears from that non-conceptual state. All of a sudden, there is this appearance of a deity. And this relates to the third samadhi and to how Buddhas reside in that non-conceptual state. But for the sake of beings, they appear, they take form in order so that we can relate to them. And then the visualization continues. Oneself is Vajrasattva, clear white, the color of the moon, He is smiling peacefully, adorned with the Sambhogakaya ornaments, holding a Vajra with the right hand and a bell with the left, while sitting with both legs in the Vajra posture upon a lotus and moon within an expanse of rainbow light. So as I mentioned earlier, this practice is a Guru Yoga practice. And in Guru Yoga, you see yourself as the perfect student, the ideal student, which means you see yourself as a Buddha already and as the perfect vessel to receive all of the blessings from your Guru. And I wanted to take a moment for a little endorsement of the words of my perfect teacher, which you probably know. It's basically a handbook on the preliminary practices, but this is a great thing to read before this retreat because you can read the Vajrasattva section to learn all about Vajrasattva, and you can read the Guru Yoga section to learn all about Guru Yoga. And it talks about the 7 branches, which we're going to see are basically the structure of this whole text, starting in just a couple pages. It talks about each one and what it means and what you should think about. So this is just this is a wonderful thing to read when you're going into this retreat. Clearly visualize this in the manner of a fish leaping out of water. So when a fish jumps, you see the whole fish immediately. You don't see part of the fish, just bam. And so that's how you visualize yourself as Vajrasattva. You just instantly appear as the deity. And this is different than some generation stage practices where you visualize many, many things before you actually get to the deity. You establish the seat and this and that and the other, but here you're just instantly appearing as Vajrasattva. In the space in front of oneself, from the very beginning, is the field of conquerors, the completely pure, spontaneous presence of samsara and nirvana. In the center of the celestial palace, primordial wisdom and its appearance, upon a lion throne with lotus, sun, and moon seat, is the embodiment of all sources of refuge, the sole Lord of Dharma, the root Lama whose kindness is unmatched, in the aspect of the sovereign master of all families, Vajrasattva. And so you're visualizing your own root guru, your own earthly teacher, as Vajrasattva. And Guru Yoga is a very important part of our tradition. Having a relationship with a root guru is a very important part of our tradition and something you should learn more about if you don't have a root guru. And you can read this book, as I mentioned, the Guru Yoga section, to learn more about what that really means. And I did want to share one comment that Gyatso Rinpoche made to me, sort of seemingly out of the blue. He said, in the future, if someone doesn't have a root guru, they can always regard Shakyamuni Buddha as their root guru. Because Shakyamuni Buddha is the Buddha of this age. He's the one who brought the teachings to this world. And he is, in that way, everyone's guru. And so you can regard him with faith and devotion. You can supplicate to him. You can, mentally request his blessings and his guidance. And he will really be present for anyone who has faith. His body is clear white in color like a snowy mountain, blazing with light as though illumined by 1,000 suns. His perfectly formed face is smiling and attractive. Resplendently beautiful with major and minor marks, he has one face and 2 hands. Embracing his consort, his right hand holds a 5-pronged vajra at the heart, while the left supports a bell at the hip. He sits with his 2 legs in the vajra posture. The supreme consort, Dorje Nyema, is the color of the moon. Embracing her consort about the neck, she holds a curved vajra knife and skull cup. In equanimous union, both male and female, with the aspects of being graceful, pliant, lithe, supple, mesmerizing, youthful, brilliant, radiant, and blazing with splendor, they possess the 9 modes of peace. So those are the 9 modes of a peaceful deity. And one of the really cool things about this particular practice is it actually enumerates what those are. Because most generation stage practices, they just say, oh, the deity has the 9 modes of peace. And you're supposed to know what those are. But here, it actually enumerates a lot of things. It answers a lot of questions. And it took me years to realize this. But this sadhana is full of very interesting information about generation stage practice in that way. Wearing upper garments of white silk, lower garments that shine with rainbow colors, fluttering ribbons, sleeves for dancing, and heavenly scarves, they are covered in the 5 silken garments. Wearing the jeweled crown, earrings, short necklace, bracelets, anklets, belt. I'm going to change this to medium length necklace, and the long necklace. So rings, I believe, is an error. And it actually should be the long necklace because there are 3 different necklaces. One is, it's not quite a choker, but it's very close. Another is at the level of the breasts, and another goes all the way down to just above the navel. They are adorned with the 8 ornaments. In the midst of immeasurable rays of blazing and scintillating light, they remain as the very essence of non-dual emptiness and bliss. Now the next 3 lines are very interesting. The 5 aggregates are the Buddhas of the 5 families. The elements are the 5 supreme goddesses. That also means the 5 female Buddhas of the 5 families. So this is the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, male and female. The aggregates being the different aspects of the Buddha's body and mind, and then the elements being the 5 elements within the body. The 8 consciousnesses and their objects, I'm going to change 5 sense organs to their objects, are the male and female bodhisattvas. So the 8 consciousnesses of the body and their objects are, the 8 consciousnesses are the male bodhisattvas and their objects are the female bodhisattvas. And the limbs are the 8 male and female guardians or wrathful deities. So these 3 lines are what is called the 3 seats. And this is another thing you hear reference to in many generation stage practices. It says, oh, their body is complete with the 3 seats. And for years, I wondered what are the 3 seats. But this sadhana actually explains it. So they are the male and female Buddhas, the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, as the aggregates and elements, the 8 consciousnesses and their objects as the bodhisattvas, and the male and female wrathful deities as the limbs of the body. And basically this is just a way of saying that your body is completely filled with countless Buddhas, and every aspect of your body, everything about it is a Buddha and is an expression of enlightened qualities. There's nothing that is ordinary or funky or defiled or anything like that. It is just all this vast, incredibly detailed display of enlightened pure qualities. All-encompassing clouds of mandalas of peaceful and wrathful deities are complete as the unceasing ornamental wheel of the 3 secrets. Surrounding are the Vidyadhara gurus of the 3 lineages, peaceful and wrathful deities, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dakinis, and Dharmapalas like an ocean of massing clouds, arising in accordance with the faithful minds of those to be tamed. So up to this point in this whole section, you've been holding the bell in Vajra and ringing the bell every 4 lines. And here at Trin Pung Trik, which is right in the middle of 55, that's the last time you ring the bell. And you can tell the practice kind of shifts gears. First, the whole first part of this prayer, you were describing yourself and the Pure Land and your guru and everything, just very kind of poetically. And now it shifts gears into invoking all the deities to come. So it goes from singing the melody to just a straight chant. Visualizing in this way, the crown is marked with a white Om, so white Om at the crown, which always usually represents enlightened body. The throat, a red Ah, that represents enlightened speech. And the heart is in the middle of your chest, it's not on the left. The heart, a blue Hung, visualized as the essence of the 3 Vajras, or the enlightened body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas. Through the radiation of light rays from the Hung and the heart, all the Tathagatas, that means all the Buddhas, of the 10 directions and 4 times, the clouds of Rupakaya, which means all the physical expressions of Buddhas, Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya, from within unchanging Dharmakaya, are invited to become the assembly of the 3 roots deities. And so they are all invited to gather here. Keith.
So the second stage of the actual practice is inviting the wisdom assembly, where we will swirl the Vajra out to rest on the index finger. So during the previous section, starting at De Tar on page 55, at De Tar Salwe, we're going to put the bell and Vajra in our laps in a mudra of equipoise like this. And then at the end, Chendrang Gyur, we're going to swirl the Vajra out like this to rest on the index finger. And then the bell stays in the same place at the left breast. So this is the second position of the Vajra, of the three that we explained in the first session. So this is for the invitation sections or descent of blessings, those kind of sections where you're inviting deities. And the first 6 lines of this prayer or of this invitation are inviting the wisdom assemblies of the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And they each have 2 lines each. After each of these 2 lines is a Shek Su Sol in Tibetan, which means they are invited, or please come forth. And during those 3 syllables, we're going to ring the bell. And actually, whenever we ring the bell during a 7 or 9 syllable long line verse, each line has 7 or 9 syllables, you're going to ring the bell on the last 3 syllables. So Shek Su Sol in this case. And in the previous section of the visualization, when we're ringing every 4 lines, you ring the bell on the last 3 syllables of whichever line you're ringing on. So after each section is a Shek Su Sol, and you ring the bell. So that means ringing 3 times, once for each of the invitations, the Dharma from the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. After that, starting from Jadong Utdu on page 57, we don't have a Shek Su Sol again for 6 more lines. And these 6 lines are really quite beautiful because the first 2 lines are kind of like an onomatopoeia of light and movement. The sound that it makes, ki li li or shik se shik, and it has this quality of enhancing our visualization. And then the next 4 lines are taken from the 7-line prayer to Guru Rinpoche. So Kordu Yidam Hwatsuk Dong and Pawo Kondro Soki Kor are an elaboration on the line Kordu Kondro Mongol Kor in the 7-line prayer. Then you have Ki Jesu Dak Drupki and Chingi Lopcher Shek Su Sol. And then there's your Shek Su Sol where we're going to ring the bell again. Then after that, there's 4 more lines. And these last 4 lines are taken from the Shower of Blessings Guru Yoga practice by Mipam Rinpoche, which is also included in the arrangement by Chenle Norbu Rinpoche. So it may seem familiar if one does that practice a lot. So Ne Chok Diru Chenpo La Drup Cho Da La Wangshi Kor Gekdan Lok Chen Barches Cho Dan Tu Mong Dru Sol. And then Chokdan Tun Mong Dru Sol, we're going to bring the Vajra from out on the index finger back to holding like regular, like this. So it's out here, and you're going to bring it in and then back to the heart. So it can actually go out like this first, and then you bring it back to the heart. So I can do a back view here. So you have your Vajra out on the index finger. You bring it back like that, and then bring it back to the heart. And while you're doing that, you're going to ring the bell. So that would be on the last line, Chokdan Tumong Modrut Sol. So then we're going to play music with the mantra. And after the music, we will perform four mudras with Za Hung Bam Ho. And this actually begins the next, it's like another section of practice. Usually has, after the invitation, you have offering the deity seats and then homage. So this little section here at the bottom of page 58 is like offering them seats. And so the mudras that go with Za Hung Bam Ho are Za, right hand index finger to left hand pinky. And Hung, Hung is like this. And then Bam, and then Ho. So switching to the back view. Za, Hung, Bam, Ho. So those four mudras go with those four syllables. And going back to the book Generating the Deity, regarding these four syllables, when you say za and form the proper mudra with your fingers, the commitment being hooks and draws forth the primordial wisdom beings. When you say home and perform the mudra, the primordial wisdom and commitment beings merge, becoming non dual. Reciting Bam confirms that the wisdom beings will remain until you accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, like attaining enlightenment or accomplishing the concerned activities of peace, expanse, power, or wrath. Reciting Ho commits the primordial wisdom beings to be with you until your purpose is achieved. And then the following little uh, visualization, all wisdom mandalas come to reside inseparably with the Samaya Sattva refuge field in front. The book says exact replicas of your own visualized mandala pour down like falling rain from the 10 directions, consecrating your meditational practice. Like water pouring into water, the primordial wisdom beings dissolve completely into the commitment beings, eliminating all distinction between the two. They become non dual. Feel certain that the wisdom beings have taken their place within your mandala and recite the Zahung Bamho. Here, the Zahung Bamho came first. And then, so it's like you're saying the mantra and then you're saying what you're visualizing after it. So then after that, we come to,
Hey, Keith,
yes.
can you switch your camera back to the
Oh
front?
yeah. So Zahung Bamho is done with the bell and Vajra. And then we're going to put the bell and Vajra back on the table or on the desk in front of us, um, around Jukpar Gyur. So you want to hold on to it a little bit in your lap while you say Yeshe Ki Korlo Nam Dungi Sokshin Dam Sik Padang Yermet Du Jukpar Gyur. And then you want to put it down on the desk. And then we recite Rangi Tukane, which is the third stage, begins the third stage of the actual practice, which is in this practice, it's actually quite long. It's a really long stage and it's separated out into the 7 branches, which begins with homage. So for this, we start by imagining that the many inconceivable offering goddesses emanate from our heart, and along with all sentient beings, they prostrate and then make the subsequent offerings in the next section. So while they prostrate, we hold our hands in the mudra of prayer. As we learned before, it's a little open, not flat, and it should be coming out from the heart center, not too high or low, but right at the heart center. And it should be, and this prayer is kind of, um, I think it's a well-known prayer throughout many practices, not just this one, the dorsum. The whole thing might be drawn from other practices, or some sections of it might be drawn, but it's a lot of the stanzas or 4-line verses are very familiar from other places. And it should be chanted nicely with either a really slow specific melody or with a general melody of practice. And then at the end, on page 61, it's appropriate to perform a pedcore with the mantra Atipuho, Pratitsaho, and then return back to the prayer mudra for the extensive offering section. So for the homage, the Generating the Deity book says, the essential and ultimate achievement of Vajrayana meditation is to experience your own nature as identical with the form of the deity, the indivisible state of great bliss and emptiness, the state of primordial wisdom. When this time comes, the vital air and mind of great bliss arise from the form of the deity, the supreme mudra. This attainment fulfills the greatest spiritual desire, and those who achieve it can effortlessly perform any type of activity necessary to benefit sentient beings. They also possess the ability to rest in the mudra of union. By relying on this method, they swiftly achieve the ultimate result, the spontaneously born primordial wisdom. This is the ultimate meaning of homage. To cultivate proper respect, however, and to accumulate merit, visualize that replicas of your ordinary body emanate from your heart to pay homage to the indivisible nature of the sphere of emptiness and primordial wisdom. Imagining in this way, recite the verses of your particular sadhana. When you practice, you can accumulate great merit by recollecting the deity's different enlightened qualities as you pay homage. Recollect why the deity has, for example, one face, two arms, and so forth. Although the meditator recites verses of homage addressed to the deities, homage is actually directed to the ultimate nature of the mind in its twofold aspect of emptiness and primordial wisdom awareness. The true nature of the mind is obscured by the dual mind, which constantly clings to the subject and grasps objects, thus creating the causes from which all other states of confusion and unhappiness arise. Because this dualistic attitude already exists, we set up another kind of dualistic situation in our meditation. Oneself appears as the meditator, the commitment beings appear from the force of the visualization, and the primordial wisdom beings appear from original purity. The commitment being and commitment mandala represent the sphere of emptiness. The primordial wisdom beings that are visualized, merging into the commitment mandala, represent the wisdom of emptiness. By recollecting the pure meaning of the symbols used in this practice, you are brought to the essential point, which is the pure nature of the mind. When you become unable to render homage to the act, then you become able to render homage to the actual nature of the self. So, like I said, you're holding your hands in prayer, and then at Ati Puho Pratitsaho, you can do a pedcore back to the prayer mudra. And then we continue on to the extensive offering section.
So we did get a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read them both and then I'll answer one and I'll let Keith answer the other. It says, first is, can you please say something about the symbolism and iconography of Ying Chukma and why she has chosen to bless the Leibum? And the second question is, if we are doing the retreat online and would like to make tormas, what tormas are used for this retreat? Which ones last for the whole retreat and which are made for each individual day? So the first question about Ying Chukma, we are talking about blessing the Lama's Bumba, which is on page 40. Yeah, to 41. And it says that we imagine the red, wrathful Ying Chukma at the top of page 41. And then that deity becomes the deity of the Leibum, the Lama's Bumba. And so I don't know specifically why Ying Chukma is used in this case. I do know that in different traditions, different deities are used, and a very common deity that's used is Dudsi Kilwa, which is a green, wrathful Heruka, which is has a strong relationship to the activity of purification. His sadhanas are often done in order to purify things. And so, for example, in the Namchu, I think most of the time in most of the sadhanas, the deity is Ditsi Kilwa. And that's why you'll often see a green colored scarf on the Lama's bumpa in that tradition. In this particular tradition, the deity is the red Yingchukma. And so you'll often see a red scarf being used, although sometimes the lamas prefer us to use a white scarf just because it represents sort of a general nature of purity. So you might see a white scarf on the lama's bumpa as well. But in different traditions, they use different deities. In the Vajrakalaya Putri Rekpung of Dujum Jigdral Yeshi Dorje, so the Vajrakalaya that goes with Dujum Rinpoche's cycle that we do in the fall, the deity of the vase is blue. I think it's Vajrakalaya or something very similar to Vajrakalaya. So sometimes we'll make the scarf on that bumpa blue to represent the color of that deity. And in a lot of these Dujum Jigdral Yeshi Dorje practices, you don't actually bless the activity vase every day, so it's hard to find out what's the color of that deity, who is that deity. For example, in the Putri Rekpung, we had to go and look in the empowerment text where you do bless that bumpa to find out what is the deity of that bumpa and what color the scarf should actually be. So sometimes with these sadhanas, you actually have to dig around through several different texts to find out these kinds of details, having to do with how to arrange the mandala or what color to make the scarves or how to do this or that. So it's really like putting together a puzzle when you do these practices. It's about taking several different texts and getting information from each one and putting it together into the sadhana. It's not just like a clear step-by-step manual of how to do these practices. Keith?
So then the other question was what tormas to make if you're just participating in the practice from home. And if you know how to make the protector tormas, the Damchin and Vamo general protector tormas, then those are always good. And you can always offer them at the end of the practice, after everything concludes, offer them outside. You can also make Kartor and Gektor and just have them on the altar until the end of of that session as well. Otherwise, if you go out to offer them at the point that they're offered, then you'll probably miss some of the practice when you come back in. So you can just make them and then place them on a nice table or on your altar if there's room. The Gektor should probably be placed lower, so it could actually be placed on the floor if needed, or on a tripod that's lower than the altar's table, or at least lower than the Kartor. Then the Damchin and Mamo can go on the left and right. Damchin on your left or the mandala's right, Mamo on your right or the mandala's left. And those are the only tormas that are made in this practice.
How about the permanent tormas?
uh, you can make maybe like shalze, like 1 or 3 shalzes, and maybe a contour if you know how. You can make that. Those can be your permanent tormas. You don't need to have your own like deity torma unless it's like your specific practice and you have one that's permanent. I don't think you need to necessarily make that out of dough for this.
All right. If anyone else has questions, feel free to send them in at any time.
And also you can also offer just like rice in a bowl for tormas. You don't have to make the actual torma. Rice or grain, and you can put some butter on top of the grain.
Keith, back when we were starting to do Zoom practices, did Sangye and Lama Chinam give a teaching or maybe even like a handout or something about how to do the practice at home and what to arrange?
I don't recall.
I think they did give some advice. We would just need to locate that teaching.
Mhm.
All right. So since we don't have any other questions, we'll continue a little bit with the text. Let's see, where were we? Okay, we were at the bottom of 61. So page 62, it says second for making offerings. So now we are in the middle of the 7-branch prayer. So that's because we're doing a guru yoga practice. A huge amount of the next, like probably 50 pages or something, is going to be the 7-branch prayer in its various branches. So this is the offering section. It's a very extensive offering section. And usually when we do Vajrasattva, we have an extensive offering section. And I think it's because when we want to purify negativity, really the antidote or the way to do that is by accumulating merit. So accumulating merit and purifying negativity, they go together and they support each other. So if you want to purify negativity, you accumulate merit, and then if you want to accumulate merit, you purify negativity, and these things build on each other. So this practice has an extensive offering section, and it also has a very extensive confession and purification section. And so this is the beginning of the offering section. The outer offering of desirable objects. So the first offerings that we make are the offerings of the 8 desirable objects. They can be described as the 8 things that you would offer to a house guest in ancient India. You would offer water for drinking, some kind of drink, water for bathing, like a foot bath, flowers, incense, light, scented water, food, and music. And so these are each enumerated here. So, and you'll notice that this verse repeats. In fact, it's almost the same identical verse. The only thing that changes is the actual offering that's being made for each time. So there's a verse, from the boundless reaches of space itself, inconceivable, spontaneously present offerings of water for drinking. That's in bold, because that's the only thing that really gets changed from verse to verse. Completely fill all regions of space. With a mind of devotion, the offering is made. And so in this verse, the water for drinking is the second line, the first 2 syllables, chudyun. So in the next verse, chudyun is going to get changed to shabsil, the next offering. So those 2 syllables are changed, but the rest of the verse is going to be repeated. And then in the mantra, Om Guru Sarvatata Gata Sapariwara Argam, Argam is going to get changed in the next verse to Padyam or Pushpe or each of the other offerings. And so during this prayer, we have our hands at our heart. And then we get to the mantra Om Guru Sarva Tathagata. We do an offering mudra. So the mudra begins with doing a paycore or lotus roll, as we were doing yesterday. And then we do the main mudra for that particular offering, which in this case is Argam. And then we do a payboop, which is when you turn your hands over from down to up, palm up, and then a snap. So from the back, Om Guru Sarva Tata Gata Sapariwara Argam Pratitsa Soha.
We want to share the video.
Oh, yes.
This is from 1980, Dudra Rinpoche performing each of these mudras. And I slowed it down by 50%, so it's easy to see. Ped core. And then the mudra itself, Argam. And then the ped boop and snap.
Then we go back to hands praying for the next verse. And then at the end of that one, page 63, it says Om Guru Sarva Tata Gata Sapariwara Padyam, water for bathing. So again, we do lotus roll, Then we go into the main mudra, which is Padyam. Then we do a pay boop and a snap. So from the back, let's see the video first. From the back, you notice my hands are marked left and right. Om Guru Sarva Tata Gata Sapariwara Padyam. And then pay boop, Pratitsa Soha. And so while we do this, mentally, we are imagining each one of these offerings as being completely vast and filling space and pleasing countless, countless Buddhas who also fill space. And this is when you can really start to use your imagination to embellish on these offerings. For example, water for drinking, you can think that there's these vast crystal vessels filled with clear, pure, soft, clean water for drinking. And also from these vessels, countless offering goddesses and gods emanate, and they're each holding a pitcher filled with pure water for drinking. You can also move on to other drinks like milk or soda or crystal, mineral water or any kind of drink that would quench people's thirst. And so you just can fill all of space with just these vast, wonderful offerings, however you want to imagine them. This is your chance to just be creative and imagine all kinds of wonderful things to drink. And even if you have a hard time imagining, you can just think to yourself, oh, these offerings are boundless. And just by the power of using that word, boundless, even if your mind can't really conceive of it, can't really visualize it, it makes your offerings boundless. And it's a way to accumulate vast and boundless merit. And that's the magical thing about language that we humans possess, is we can say words even though we can't totally conceive of it, we can still bring about that effect. In the same way that we say, I'm working for the sake of all beings, even though of course we really can't conceive of how many beings there are. So anyhow, so that was Padyam, water for bathing. Then we're doing Pushpe. So when we get to the mantra, we do Pe Kor. And so Pushpe, the mudra you're ending up with is palms up like this, right? The other mudras we've done are kind of palms sideways so far. So with Pushpe, you do the Pe Boop before the main mudra. So we do lotus roll and come all the way to here. Then we do the Pe Boop where you turn your hands over and you go into Pushpe. And then we don't need to do another Pe Boop because we already did one, so you just snap. So every mudra only gets one pay boop. You only turn your hands over one time. So most of the time you do it right before the snap, but occasionally when the mudra is palms up, like Pushpe or Nevidye, then you do the pay boop first so you can end up palms up, and then after that mudra you just snap. So let's see Dijam Rinpoche doing this.
And 4. And boop. To Pushpe. Then snap.
So from the back, we have the Pe Kor, Pe Boop, Pushpe, and snap. The next one is Dupe on page 64. So that's going to be Pe Kor, go into Dupe, Pe Boop, and snap. So let's see His Holiness.
Pedkor. Juve. Pedboop and snap.
From the back, Pedkor, Dupe, Pedboop, and snap. Next is alloque on page 65. So alloque as Pedkor, lotus roll, and goes into alloque. And then the way I learned this was pay boop and snap. But when we see the video, he doesn't really do much of a pay boop. He really just kind of goes into the snap. So either way is okay, but let's see what His Holiness does.
Pedkor. The mudra, aloke. Snap.
So from the back, Pedkor, alloque, and snap. Next is Gende, scented water or perfume. So this one is Pedkor, Gende, Pedboop, snap.
Or inde. Pedboop.
From the back, Pedkor, Gende, Pedboop, and snap. Next is Noedye or food, page 66. So this one is Pedkor, Pedboop, Noedye, and snap.
Or Pedboop. To the mudra, nuide. And snap.
From the back, Pedkor, Pedboop, Noedye, and snap. And the last one in this cycle is Shabda or music on page 66 at the bottom. So this one is Pedkor, Shabda, Pedboop, and snap.
Gore. Pedboop. No, Shapta mudra, and then Pedboop and snap. So he picks up the symbols there, but everybody else should do the Pedboop. to snap, and then pick up the bell and vajra to play with the music.
So from the back, that's Pekor, Shabta, Boop, and Snap. And then, as Keith said, pick up the bell and vajra and play it during this is a normal music that happens at this point. And I think we've hit the end of that section and the end of our time. One person is asking where to get the text for this practice, and you can find the link. You can both get a digital and a paper version. You can find the link in the retreat information where you got the information about this study group. It's at vimalatreasures.org is where you find the text.
Okay, dedicate the merit. Nam di tam ji zimba ni to ni be ra nam bam ji xin ge ga nga ji ba la ru ba xin bi so le ro wa shu. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. We will see you next Saturday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time.